Maryland men's basketball continues to ride a hot streak into the Big Ten tournament, while women's basketball struggles in Indy. Men's and women's lacrosse continue to dominate, and wrestling showed out in the Big Ten championship. All that and more coming up on this edition of The Left Bench.
Right now, we're an average team still. Another 2-2 week.
Big thing was I thought our bench really gave us some really good minutes in the first half.
Welcome back to The Left Bench, brought to you by Terrapin Sports Central. I'm Ricky Podgorski. That's Alex Gary. Alex, it's March. We have a jam-packed slate for today's show, but why don't we start with Maryland men's basketball? A huge win over the weekend against Northwestern. What a win on senior day. We
got the Big Ten tournament coming this up. Indianapolis, baby. Let's go. But let's take it back a little. Let's start with that Northwestern game.
Postseason now, but let's start with Saturday. It was the final game for Maryland of the regular season, and every member of the Crab Five made sure to show up in this one. Senior day for the Terps, and of course, everyone goes wild for Julian Reese. Remember, he's been in College Park longer than head coach Kevin Willard. The Xfinity Center makes sure to show its appreciation. Reese returned to the favor with an electric start, but Maryland turns the ball over 11 times in the first half. Terps only lead by 3 at the break. Northwestern's Nick Martinelli with another great outing, 7 boards, a perfect from the free throw line, and a game-high 28 points. But Maryland was dominant on the glass all afternoon, out-rebounding the Wildcats 45-23. Reese leading the way with 19 points and 11 boards, and then it's Jacoby Gillespie helping out with a couple of clutch threes late in the second. All 5 Maryland starters finishing double figures again as the Terps wrap up their regular season with a comfortable 74-61 win.
Northwestern had a really tough loss against UCLA on Monday, and we played Wednesday night. So I knew we were going to be a little flat. We were going to be emotional and flat, and I think the big thing was I thought our bench really gave us some really good minutes in the first half to kind of spell some guys. Just being at home really helped.
And with the win against Northwestern, Maryland has secured the number 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament. So let's take a look at the bracket and break things down. We'll start with the Terps, who secured the double bye. Maryland will play Friday at 6:30 Eastern against the winner of Iowa and Ohio State, and then Illinois. Also on Maryland's side of the bracket are number 3 Michigan and 6 Purdue.
At the top of the bracket is number 1 Michigan State, who will take on the winner of the 8-9 game between Indiana and Oregon. UCLA rounds out the top half of the bracket as the 4 seed and Wisconsin as the 5. If the seeds hold, Maryland would escape the Big Ten regular season champs in Michigan State until a rematch in the championship game. To help us take a look at Maryland basketball's final game of the year and preview the Big Ten tournament, we are honored to be joined by DC News Now's sports reporter and one of the founding members of the Left Bench, Alex Flum. Thanks so much for joining us, Alex.
Yeah, Ricky and Alex, it's great to be on here with you guys.
And I think you got a little something special on there that you got to show the viewers.
Forgot to mention, I had to break out the Left Bench polo shirt. Haven't worn this thing in a while, but seemed like the perfect time to do it for this show.
Awesome. But let's get right into things. We'll start with the Northwestern game, senior day. First half was a little slow offensively, but the Terps turned things around in the second. What do you think changed at halftime to give Maryland the win? And then talk a little bit about the seniors' impact this season. We know how important Julian Reese was to the program, but you got Selton Miguel, Jay Young coming off the bench. Talk to me a little bit about Northwestern.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, Martinelli for Northwestern, he is a menace. And I think once they realized that, if they could force other guys on that team into mistakes and just get their shooting on the Terps end going a little bit better. But I think that Crab 5 being able to continue to dominate is a real key for them. Juju Reese, really impressive senior day for him. Derek Queen continuing to make his presence felt as a freshman. And then, I think you have to just really continue to be really impressed with what Jacoby Gillespie is able to do at the point guard position. Rodney Rice, Selton Miguel as well. It's that Crab 5 continuing to step up. And I think with the Terps, like we saw in the game as well a little bit, when you have someone from that bench that can come in and step up. So when Jordan Geronimo can have a good game and he can contribute, or, if they can get anybody else coming off that bench, because the offense from the bench is a little bit of a concern, but when that bench can contribute, I think that can push this team over the edge in certain situations.
Now, Alex, looking back at the season as a whole, what's really been the biggest reason for Maryland's turnaround, specifically in the Big Ten Conference?
Yeah, well, I think you're going to probably hear this from me a lot in this conversation, but when you have one of the best starting lineups, if not the best starting lineup in the country, you're going to be able to do pretty well in a tough conference too. And I think that this team, they all have their roles. They all know what they're doing. It doesn't seem like anyone's too selfish. I mean, sometimes we see moments where, I think back to the Michigan State game towards the end of the game and Derek Queen's pulling up for this odd three towards the end of the game in crunch time. You see moments like that, but you don't see that too much from this team. I think they play together. I think they're playing for Kevin Willard. I think the guys that were here last year don't want to see a repeat of that. And the guys that have come in have really bought into this. They have a lot of different skill sets. They have guys that can shoot. They defend really well. So I think they've just totally flipped the switch into basically almost everything the opposite of what happened last year.
It's March now, so obviously that means it's the postseason. We got the Big Ten tournament coming up this week, and then later the NCAA tournament. But let's stick with the Big Ten tournament. What do you think Maryland's ceiling and floor is in the Big Ten tournament after clinching that double bye?
I think no question the ceiling is winning the tournament. It's not something we've seen from them in the Big Ten era. It's not something that Terps fans are probably used to or think might be possible, but they have shown this year that they can hang with anyone. They went toe-to-toe with Michigan State just recently. They don't have a loss of more than one score since I think the beginning of January. So I think they can go into this tournament and they can make a run. I don't think they're going to win it. It's really tough to win that thing. And, Michigan State really showed, that they could contain the guards and they could give Derek Queen some fits. And they were able to win that game in College Park. It was a close one, but they were able to win. So I think Maryland, the ceiling, I think, is winning it. And honestly, in this Big Ten, I think the floor is they run into a really good Illinois team or an Ohio State team that's playing a little better maybe, and they lose that first game. So I think there's a wide variety of results we could see. What do I think will happen? I think we're going to see them win a couple games, at least one, maybe two, but I think you're probably looking at a loss to Michigan getting revenge, or a loss to maybe Michigan State in the final.
Now, looking ahead to the NCAA tournament, what's going to be that difference between Maryland making a deep run or being just another upset?
Yeah, I think we talk about the Crab Five and we talk about the bench. I think the bench, if the bench can score some points in big games, then Maryland makes a deep run. I think this is going to be, I really do, the first time that we see Maryland make it to the Sweet 16 since when we were getting these polo shirts printed almost 10 years ago. So I think we could really see them make a run. But, when you get to those games, and if you have a game where Jacoby Gillespie and or Rodney Rice gets in foul trouble, you're not going to maybe be able to rely on Jay Young and Deshaun Harris-Smith to come in and start hitting threes. And that's when you're going to run into some trouble. And if a team can, give Derek Queen some problems, you're going to run into some trouble with that. So I think also Juju is going to be big. We've seen him down the stretch in a lot of moments, especially that Northwestern game on senior day, an emotional day for him, play really well. So I think if he can continue to be strong down there and be that leader, we saw him will them to a victory in the tournament last year over West Virginia. I think we may see big moments from him again. But I think there's no question that this team, we could see them in San Antonio. It's certainly possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but this team is that good. And this is the best Maryland team we've seen here in almost a decade. And they might be better than that team, maybe since Grievous Vasquez and Gary Williams were running the show here. So I think Terps fans have every right to be excited, but I would say cautiously optimistic because there's a lot of talent all throughout the country.
Those are some big predictions and some big expectations for this team, but that's all the questions we have for you today. Alex, thanks so much for joining us. Always happy to have the legend on the show.
Thank you, guys. Keep doing the great work over there.
Thank you. And you can check out all of Alex's Maryland coverage and D.C. area sports coverage over at DC News Now.
We've got the Big Ten tournament first, but of course we are all thinking of that NCAA tournament.
Of course, that's right. And TSC's Benji Kaufman has more on who Maryland could potentially play in the Big Dance. Benji, what do you got?
Guys, bracketologists are saying this is one of the worst years to face mid-major teams in the Big Dance. And what I mean by that is those smaller double-digit seeded schools are teams that look like real threats for Power 5 programs in this year's tournament. Maryland is expected to be a 4 or 5 seed in the tournament, which matches the Terps with a 12 or 13 seed, allowing for a matchup with a tough mid-major. And one of those teams that fans could expect to see is McNeese State. The Cowboys dominated the Southland Conference, going 19-1 in conference play. Will Wade's team does not have a lot of sides, but it plays with a lot of intensity on defense. Lots of trapping, hedging, and switching on screens, trying to wreak havoc and bully their opponents into making a lot of mistakes. They force almost 15 turnovers a game playing that way, which is top 30 in the nation. In Maryland's 7 losses, they average almost 12 turnovers per game. But if the Terps take care of the ball and feed Queen and Reese inside, they should be able to handle business and temper the vibes here and handle McNeese. Another team that analysts are seeing Maryland face in the first round is VCU. The Rams are having one of the best years in program history and actually have a similar play style to the Terps. VCU is one of the best rebounding teams in the country, and they make nearly 10 threes a game. On top of that, they have 4 guards who put up at least 10 points a night, and teams shoot under 40% from the field against them. It's been 9 years since VCU has won a tournament game, so Maryland has got to be ready for a hungry team looking to end that drought if they draw VCU. Those are just 2 of the teams Maryland might play in the tournament, but Maryland, there's chances they might play George Mason, who's in the same conference as VCU in the A10. They might play UC San Diego, Chattanooga, who each have one of the best three-point shooters in the country in Honor Huff for Chattanooga and Tyler McGee for UC San Diego. But they also might play bubble teams, Power 5 schools that didn't have the best of seasons but could creep up on you in March. Teams like Indiana, Ohio State, North Carolina, so Maryland's got to keep an eye on them as well. And guys, this is a lot of talk. Maryland still has the Crab 5, one of the best units and teams in the country, but all I'm saying is don't overlook these mid-major squads looking to shake up brackets around the country, because when it comes to the tournament, any special season can come to an end because of a bad matchup. Back to you guys.
Yeah, Benji, there are so many schools that can make some noise in the NCAA tournament. We're going to talk about a couple of those schools that could potentially make some noise in the NCAA tournament later on in the show, but great stuff there.
Yeah, and I mean, the same is true on the women's side, and we saw it this weekend at the women's Big Ten tournament. After an exciting end to Maryland women's basketball season last week, expectations were high for the Big Ten tournament. But against the 5th-seeded Michigan Wolverines, Terps simply ran out of juice. It was all Michigan in the first quarter as the Wolverines go on a 21-0 scoring run. When it looked like this one was over in the first, it's Sarah Tibiasu battling back. Terps go on their own scoring run and cut the deficit to 4 at half. All the momentum going Maryland's way, out of the half, it was the Wolverines getting hot again, leading by as much as 20 in the third. Michigan never took its foot off the gas and cruised to a 98-71 victory over the Terps. Now stay tuned, because when we come back, we'll recap a historic weekend for Maryland wrestling at the Big Ten Championship.
And we'll take a look at how one gym Terp is serving her passion off the mats. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Left Bench, presented by Terrapin Sports Central. Alex Gary, Ricky Podgorski, and Ricky, Maryland Wrestling showed out in Evanston for the Big Ten tournament.
That's right, Alex. A huge showing for the Terps, and it was one for the record books. Maryland Wrestling had a historic weekend at the Big Ten Championships, but they put on their best display in the competition in program history. We'll start on day 1 of the championships, where the Terps record 47.5 points, shattering the previous program record of 39 set at last year's championships. The Terps placed 6th, another program record, with Braxton Brown, Cal Miller, Ethan Miller, Branson John, Jackson Smith, and Seth Nevels taking top 8 finishes and automatic qualification to the 2025 NCAA championships. The team finished the Big Ten championships with 54 team points, its highest since joining the conference.
Maryland baseball took on UCLA at home this weekend to open Big Ten play, but it was the Bruins who returned home with bragging rights. Teams split the first 2 games 1 apiece, but the third game showed who the better squad is this early in the season. UCLA and Maryland trade outs in the first 2 innings with no runs scored, but the second inning settles the score early, with the Bruins eclipsing 11 runs, the most an opponent has had on Maryland this season. 3-run home run by UCLA's Mulivi Levu was a big part of the team's momentum. While the Terps tried to mount a comeback with runs in the 5th, 6th, and 7th inning, it wasn't enough. UCLA wins Game 3 and takes the series. Here's Matt Swope after the series loss.
Right now, we're an average team still. You know, another 2-2 week. I thought we played well for the majority of the innings. You know, albeit the final couple innings Friday and that 1 second inning yesterday. I'm pretty happy with how we played overall from the weekend, but you know, we're still 2-2 on the week.
After beating last year's national champs, Maryland men's lacrosse continues to prove why they are the #1 team in the country, this time against Delaware. 3 minutes into the game, Matthew Keegan opens up the scoring, and after a Delaware goal a minute later, Maryland regains control. The Terps take full control for the rest of the game, scoring 7 consecutive goals and holding Delaware scoreless for almost 25 minutes. Maryland's defense caused 8 turnovers, and 5 Terps scored multiple goals en route to the 14-3 victory. Here's what head coach John Tillman had to say after the win.
It was like, okay, we need to kind of keep moving forward. So we try to approach every week the same, and we try not to kind of get too far away from anything we do.
Maryland women's lacrosse also took home a dub, their game on the road at James Madison, extending their winning streak to 4 in a row. Maryland jumps out to a commanding 5-0 lead early in the first quarter. Terps defense was on full display as they hold the Dukes scoreless for the first 16 minutes of the game. Maryland's smothering defense held the Dukes scoreless again through the entire third quarter as well. Corey Edmondson leads the way for the Terps, finishing with a first-half hat-trick. Maryland cruises to a dominant road victory against James Madison, 11-5.
Maryland softball had a successful weekend at the Hale Southern Classic, combining for 20 runs in just 4 games. Terps with a doubleheader on Friday, starting out against Rider and running up 9 runs in 5 innings. Next on the Friday slate was Georgia Southern, where Maryland took its only L at the Hale Southern, 3-1. On to Saturday, and you guessed it, Rider and Georgia Southern again. Maryland wins both games 5-0 against Rider and 5-1 against Georgia Southern, a successful weekend down in Georgia.
As the Gym Terps near the end of their regular season, they take care of business at the Yale Tri-Meet. Let's start with the bars, where it's Alexa Rothenbucher with a season high of 9.9. Terps show out on the beam, highlighted by a new career high from Raina Engelmeyer, scoring a 9.8. Overall, Terps take 3 of 4 events, defeating Yale and LIU with a score of 196.150.
That score for Maryland gymnastics was one of the Gym Terps' highest scores of the year, but this season, one gymnast is challenging herself on and off the gym floor.
For a deeper dive on one of the team's newest athletes, we're now joined by TSC's Ryan Martin.
Yeah, guys, we know how difficult gymnastics can be from the high school to the Olympic level, but there's one gymnast who's certainly taking that to a new extreme this year and redefining what both difficulty and commitment means. Take a listen.
Requiring technique, timing, and toughness, collegiate gymnastics is hard. And in the Big Ten, one gymnast is addressing the new challenge by taking on another. Meet Maggie Murphy, a freshman for Maryland Gymnastics, who this year became the first known Terp to be a Division I athlete and cadet in the university's Army ROTC program. Murphy's development in the difficult first came about when doing Spartan races as a high school freshman, a passion that led her to Army ROTC after committing to Maryland Gymnastics.
Obviously, gymnastics isn't gonna take me out of college, so I wanted something that had that similar physical and mental toughness that gymnastics had, that what Spartan races had too, so that's kind of what led me into doing ROTC.
She just seems so excited, and she's definitely really passionate about it. I remember when I went into her room and she showed me her uniform for the first time, and she was just so excited to put it on and show us all.
And while his gymnasts do surprise Brett Nelligan, Maryland's head coach knew to work with Murphy, who aspires for a future in the CIA or FBI.
You know, we say you're going to do gymnastics for 4, maybe 5 more years, but you're going to have your career for the rest of your life. So if this is something that you're interested in, we want to support it wholeheartedly.
And for Murphy, the freshman from Massachusetts says that she's at her best when challenging herself, both physically and mentally, getting better each day, whether it's here under the Xfinity Center lights or here at the Record Armory, where Murphy's days with Army ROTC start early and the start times speak for themselves.
Know how to kind of handle like difficult situations with like, you know, being under stress. No matter what, like you're not gonna be perfect and there's gonna be failures. So I've honestly like learned a lot from those failures to keep pushing myself.
Is to destroy or harass.
And that's what ROTC has helped me with, like doing the different fitness trainings. Everyone's there behind you, which is what you have in gymnastics too.
And when Murphy says she has everyone behind her, she's including her adult leadership too. People at both programs who have helped her make a schedule that's stuck.
While I've seen some freshmen struggle their first semester in ROTC at balancing academic and ROTC requirements, I think she has the maturity and the discipline that's necessary to be able to be an athlete, a student, and a cadet. So it says a lot about her character.
You know, we just ask her to communicate to us. Like if you've had a really, you know, early morning with the ROTC or a hard workout, we want to make sure that we adapt or adjust her workout so that she's safe in here.
Murphy and Maryland will continue to adjust as her accomplishments, like earning National Cadet of the Week in November, just keep adding up. In College Park, I'm Ryan Martin, Terrapin Sports Central.
Ryan, first thing, 5 a.m. wake-up call for that one. That's pretty impressive there and good commitment for that story. But, I mean, it's such a unique story, having ROTC and any sort of college athlete. What was one of the coolest things you saw there?
Ricky, I had to wake up at 5 a.m. to hold the camera. They woke up at 5 a.m. That whole class, they were learning how to ambush both in the classroom and in the field. Right before that, Murphy was saying that they've learned how to throw a grenade, so a little bit different than your typical gen ed lab. But it was certainly a cool experience to see what Murphy's day is like going from Army ROTC to Maryland Gymnastics.
I mean, that's just madness. But, you know, we are in March, and, you know, March Madness, stay right with us because when we come back, Ricky and I are going to make some bold predictions ahead of the conference tournaments.
And, of course, we'll crown our Pro Terp of the Week in top 5 plays.
Julie was always a voracious reader. She'd carry 2 novels on an airplane because she'd read one on a 3-4 hour ride. And at some point, I began to notice that she would read a page and couldn't remember what she had just read, and she'd have to go back and read it again.
I don't remember much these days after I read, but less does for me, and I love it.
Welcome back to the Left Bench, presented by Terrapin Sports Central. Ricky Podgorski, Alex Gary. We talked a lot about it in the beginning of the show, but it's the best time of the year. It is March, which means it's tournament time, and we have a lot on our minds.
I mean, we could talk all day about what team we think could make a run, but Ricky and I thought we'd focus on a few teams, some we think will find success, and some we think will come up short. So, Ricky, what do you think?
Yeah, we're calling this sleepers and slumps. Sleepers, we mean people that we think and teams that we think could overachieve and go a little further in the tournament. But slumps are people that we think might underachieve, teams that kind of won't match their seed line. So we'll start with my sleeper and slump first. For my sleeper, I'm going to go with High Point University.
Ooh,
all right, High Point.
Right.
We got a mid-major here. It's their first NCAA tournament appearance in program history. Now, Alex, you're probably saying, experience translates to March. This is the first time. That's not going to work. I'll tell you exactly why it's going to work. HPU is probably going to be like a 13 seed, which means they'll probably be matched up against a 4, maybe a 12 seed 5. and I think that's perfect for High Point. They play fast and they shoot the ball extremely well. Right now, they're 55th in the country in three-point field goal percentage, which isn't the greatest, but they're 26th in the country on offensive rating, which means they're super efficient from the field. They shoot nearly 50% from the field. When they get hot, they could be dangerous. The craziest thing about High Point, though, is how deep this team is. They go about 12, 13 players deep on the bench. When you compare that to Maryland and the Crab Five, who usually only goes like 2, 3 guys on the bench, and those 2, 3 guys don't really make the biggest impact. It's crazy when you think about how much depth this team has. And remember how I mentioned with High Point, this is their first time in program history making it to the tournament. Well, what if I told you that 75% of this roster is coming back from last year? They have a lot of experience within their team. They have a lot of team chemistry, and that's what you need to win in March. I think if this team gets hot, they can make a real run, and I would not want to see them if I was a 4, 5, 6 seed, wherever they fall.
I like that. I like it. It's a really seems like a little really trendy pick, and I think they do have that type of team where they could make some teams really scared.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into my slump, which is Clemson, and Clemson and High Point could actually be paired up together, which is crazy, but Clemson is a very, very good team. Let me say this here. If they go on an Elite 8 run, I would not be surprised at all. If they go to the Final Four, that might surprise me a little bit, but I think Clemson could go far. I think if they're matched up with the wrong team out of the gate, Clemson could really struggle. Let me tell you a little about some of the pros of Clemson, just to play devil's advocate. They beat Duke. Duke is the #1 team in the country right now in the AP poll. It's a great win, great win. They're 12th in the country in three-point percentage. They shoot the ball really well from behind the arc, and you need to do that in March. And they don't foul. They don't give up stupid penalty shots, free throw shots for, my mind's all over the place because it's March, it's mad out here, but they don't give up free throw shots. But here's where Clemson struggles a little bit. They're 226 in the country in defensive rebounding. If they face the wrong team early, meaning like a bigger team, maybe they have a freak athlete who cleans up the glass, I think Clemson's really gonna struggle. They also don't get to the line. They rank 305th in the country in free throws attempted and free throws per game. That's not great in March. And obviously, their strength of schedule is a question mark. The ACC isn't the strongest conference this year. There's probably only going to be about 3 teams going to the tournament, including Clemson. You got Louisville and Duke, most likely going to make it to the NCAA tournament. So their strength of schedule this year may not be as strong as years past. Now, like I said, they're probably going to be around that 4, 5, 6 seed line. We know the 5-12 upset is probably the most popular NCAA tournament upset. 4-13 is becoming a more prominent one, and right now I think Clemson might track as a 4. High Point's the 13. I'm going to take High Point, and there's a couple other teams that I would take over Clemson. Drake and McNeese. Drake in that championship game on Sunday looked terrifying. If I draw Drake in the first round, I am scared. I think Clemson could go far in this tournament, but I'm going to take them as a little bit of an underachiever. I could see them exiting in the first or second round.
As much as I want to agree with that slump from Clemson, they're returning a lot of their players from last year, and they were an Elite 8 team last year. So I think a slump is entirely possible if they match up with one of those trendy, those really hot teams. I don't know. We'll have to see how this one pans out.
It's a toss-up. It's a hot take.
So let's go over to my teams. Let's start off with my sleeper, the UC San Diego Tritons. First year in Division I. First year they're eligible for the tournament. This team is unbelievable defensively. They force more steals per possession than anyone else in the country. Not only are they that good defensively, they're that good offensively as well. They're second in the nation in scoring margin, plus 18.9, which is insane. They can score at will. And, you know, March Madness, it's all about stories. A team being eligible for the tournament for the first year, going in and possibly winning a game, unbelievable. They have a player, Aniwa Tate Jones, unbelievable name, unbelievable player. People are going to be remembering his name, hopefully for his performance in the tournament. And just, I cannot say enough stuff about UC San Diego. I think they're that good that even if they don't win their tournament, they could potentially get an at-large bid. We saw John Fanta posted his top 25. He had them in the top 25. He's high on UC San Diego. I'm high on UC San Diego.
You're seeing Aniwa kind of like Jack Golke, maybe Doug Eder, and a little action. Carson Edwards way back in the day with Purdue, kind of just lighting up out of nowhere. You're seeing that from him?
I mean, he's been doing it all season long. I don't see how that's going to stop when they make the tournament.
I also will say, this is a really cool logo. The Tritons, that's a really cool mascot. All right, Alex, what's your slumper? I see it up there, Michigan. I already agree with you, but go ahead.
Yeah, Michigan is one of those teams where everyone was so high on them a month ago. And then this month happened. They lose to Illinois. They lose to Maryland. They lose to Michigan State. And these losses weren't, the loss to Maryland was close, but the other two weren't even close. And one of the most important things about March, you need to have reliable and consistent guard play. That's something that Michigan doesn't really have. They have Vlad Golden, they have Danny Wolf. Those are their two guys. They win and die by those two guys. But there isn't really an option who can really shoot from the outside. I know both those big men can shoot, but they don't really have reliable guard play, which I think is something that you really need in March. Now, they're going to be, again, around that 4 seed, and they could match up against a UC San Diego, a High Point, some of those other teams that you mentioned. And I just think energy and being hot matters right now. And going into the Big Ten tournament, they are maybe one of the coldest teams in the Big Ten. And maybe they get a little hot in the tournament, but if not, I don't see them winning a game, honestly.
I saw a mock bracket today, and it kind of made me chuckle, where Michigan could be matched up with Yale. And Yale's a really, really tough Ivy League school, and that would be really funny if Yale knocked off Michigan. We all know Danny Wolf transferred from Yale to Michigan. If they're your slump and you're paired up with Yale and Yale knocks them off, that would be something. But
That's
I think,
tough.
like you said, High Point, UC San Diego, those are some really good teams. They can knock off Michigan. They're slow. They're cold right now. I don't know. We'll see what happens in the Big Ten tournament first with Michigan, and then I think we'll reevaluate. But I agree with you. I think they're a pretty big slump.
It's March. Anything can happen.
Anything could happen.
Anything can happen. Well, we don't know if any of our sleepers are going to win awards, but we do know that our Terp of the Week deserves this honor and then some. This week's Terp of the Week is Juju Reese. The 4-year starter for the Terps took Gary Williams' court for the final time on Sunday, and he balled out in his finale. Reese led the Terps with 19 points, along with 11 boards and 2 monster blocks to win his final game in Xfinity. Congrats to Juju on a great 4 years and being named our Terp of the Week.
For our Pro Terp, we're going with Maryland men's basketball alum. He's been playing overseas, but is now about to make his mark in the G League. Our Pro Terp is Daryl Morcell. Morcell was acquired by the Capital City Go-Go on Thursday of last week. He previously played in the Kosovo Basketball Super League and for the Terps from 2017 to 2021. Across his Maryland career, he averaged 8.7 points per game, 4 boards, and 2.2 assists. Congrats to Daryl on being selected as our Pro Terp. Alex, you know what time of the show it is? It's top 5 time. Why don't you get us started with number 5?
Let's go. Ava McKinney starting it off with a steal, and she finishes through contact. Maryland didn't have a lot of highlights in this game, but this one to stir a little bit of a comeback going and get it to the bucket. What a tough finish by Ava.
A tough finish there, but also here at CQ Stadium from Braden Erksa. Front of the crease, dives right in and gets the goal. Looks like right at the top of the net there. What a goal from Braden Erksa, number 4.
We saw Erksa with some agility and stuff. Now we'll go to gymnastics. Well, Brayna Engelmeyer, look at that little flip. Look at the dismount off the beam. I mean, unbelievable movement there. Unbelievable, right, Raina?
Now up to Evanston for the Big Ten Championships, and it's Jackson Smith with the tech takedown. A career day for Smith, a career day for the program. Just an absolute dominant outing at the Big Ten Championships for Maryland Wrestling.
And at number 1, we had to do it. We had to do it. Rodney Rice puts him on skates and nails the 3. I mean, this is just filthy. This is borderline criminal by Rodney Rice. Oh my God. Sinks the shot. Unbelievable, disrespectful, and that's just been what Rodney's been doing all season long.
The funniest part about that play is Trey Berry thought that the ball got tipped by Rodney, picks it up from backcourt. Trey Berry's clapping at the refs, gets dropped. 3 in his mouth. He actually started chuckling because he knew how embarrassing that was.
That's the only response you can really do to that. That's a top play right there.
That is. Sign us off, Alex.
That'll do it for this edition of The Left Bench. Stay tuned for more from TSC this week as Ryan Morton and Laura Shaughnessy will talk all things men's basketball on The Left Bench in Focus.
You can keep up with all of Terrapin Sports Central's coverage by subscribing to our YouTube channel, following us on X, Instagram, visiting our website at terrapinsportscentral.com.
We'll see you next time.